Have you been able to do some Bible reading this week? Yeah? I want to encourage you, if you've not been able to stay up with that, don't feel bad about it. Just do today's readings and try tomorrow's and the day after. And if you get time, then go back and catch up. But I would encourage you just to join us wherever you can start today. That would be a great thing. I want us to start with our thoughts this morning from Proverbs chapter 3 in verse 5 and 6. Perhaps you remember reading these words this week. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. I want you to try to hold those words in your mind as we talk a little bit this morning. I'm going to leave them up there for a few moments because I was reminded about something that I know. I mean, I already knew it. It's not something I suddenly found in Scripture and went, wow, how come I didn't notice that before? But it's something very familiar and common to us. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, those three who are so highly regarded in our faith, who are considered these founders, beginners of our faith, the people who have really set the course for us, they were not really wonderful examples of virtue. That's the nice way to say it. They were not wonderful examples of virtue. As far as I can tell, we hold them in high regard not because of their actions, but because, for the simple reason that when God spoke, they believed. The Creator of heaven and earth chose them. And when we think about his call to them, they responded. In short, they are believers. Now, that belief did not manage to translate itself into faithful, obedient, amazing, wondrous, virtuous action that withstood every test and challenge. Did you notice that this week? No, Abraham believed, but apparently thought that God needed, some help. So he decided to put his trust in plans that he and Sarah could conceive, rather than waiting on the Lord. Yes, I believe he was willing to kill his son Isaac. I think he was. I don't really believe that he was hoping God would stop him. I don't think that's the story. I think by this point in his life, when he takes Isaac up on that mountain, I think he believes that God is going to keep his promise somehow. Somehow, in that great moment, he believes God will follow through on the ultimate plan. Will he give him another son? I don't know. Maybe. I think he hoped that God's promise would be kept, regardless of what action was happening in this moment. And Isaac believed that God would do the same in keeping his promise, that the extension of the promise to his father came to him. But that did not keep him from making the same mistakes his father did. Did you notice that? The sins of the father onto the son. There they are. He has trouble believing, trusting that people who are more powerful won't hurt him. Think about that. I'm not saying that people are more powerful than God, but for Isaac, I think he reveals something that we sometimes get stuck thinking as well. God is powerful in spirit, but there are people with flesh and blood, and they can hurt you. And it becomes a test of faith. Do we believe the promises of God to bless us? Isaac struggled. It seems to be a dilemma for Abraham and Isaac. They were constantly afraid, it seems, in the stories we're told, that somebody would somehow hurt them, cause them harm. And as long as I'm thinking about it, why is it that none of them pause to think that God will bless the righteous? Moral, upstanding, good people who choose to do what's right and don't lie. That does not seem to be their mode. So they manage Isaac to have a son Abraham's grandson, who believes that it's more convenient to connive and scheme and lie and deceive. And that seems to be what they produce. Jacob believes he can trick Dad, and I guess by extension, God. Doesn't that seem so strange? Why? These do not seem to be people of great faith. Not the way we use the word usually, and yet they are. Not because of their actions, but simply because they believed God. He will bless. That's what they believed. God will bless. He is a God of blessing, and they believed He has called. And so we're reminded of these words again. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight. I was taken to another moment where these words continued to stay with me. It's a moment I often remember. It is not the great moment of confession of Peter as he considers who the Christ is. It's a different sort of confession, one made by an outsider, one who would not have been considered just. He would not have been considered honorable by the Jewish people. He is not an heir of the promise, and yet his confession is humbling. Did you read these words? When Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him asking for help. Lord, he said, my servant lies at home, paralyzed and in terrible suffering. Jesus said to him, I will go and heal him. The centurion replied, Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof, but just say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes, and that one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard this, he was astonished and said to those following him, I tell you the truth. I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith. I say to you that many will come from the east and the west and will take their places at the feast with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the subjects of the kingdom will be thrown outside into the darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then Jesus said to this centurion, Go, it will be done just as you believed it would. And his servant was healed at that very hour. The centurion, too, it seems, is a believer. He believes in the power and authority of Jesus. I don't know if he understands who Jesus is, but what is remarkable is that he is able to put aside his reservations, maybe even his prejudices, and believe. He takes a leap of faith, and he believes that the word of Jesus is enough. So strong is the faith that he professes in Jesus that he humbles himself. A Roman, a centurion, stating that a poor Jewish carpenter, a Jew, is too honorable to enter my home. He is unworthy of even having the presence of Jesus in his home. He is unworthy of the presence of Jesus. In effect, he isn't worthy to have Jesus bless him. That's his profession. And it's a remarkable confession. One so remarkable that Jesus holds this man's faith, this pagan worshiper, this oppressor of the people of the promise, this enemy of Israel. That's how the people would have seen him. Jesus holds this man's faith above all others in the nation of Israel. It's a remarkable moment where he says many will join the feast of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But those who think they're on the inside, they're going to be thrown out. I sometimes wonder what actions of mine reveal that I don't really trust God. Do you ever stop and think about that? I mean, what if you lived 175 years? It's a long time. Steve, what if you get 175? But only a few snapshots of your life are taken. Only a few moments are recorded. Which ones would show that you have good days? Which one would show the bad? How would you be seen? Can those things really capture who you are? Perhaps it's not that simple. My virtue, my obedience, maybe it can't be measured in my action. We would like to think that, but look at Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Maybe, just maybe, I have to close my eyes. Instead of remembering my life, I need to remember instead that my value comes not from my action, but my value comes from my Creator, the one who made me. Maybe my value comes not from what I've done, but from the one who called me. Maybe that's what makes me special, is the one who claimed me. Maybe, just like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we are the people of God, the heir of the blessing, because God is unfailing, and He is full of faithful love. Did you catch that confession this week? That God is unfailing. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, not so much. God is faithful. Maybe Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob aren't. God is faithful. God is loving. It's the word maybe that's making me a little bit uncomfortable as I say all those maybes. Maybe God is a God of blessing. Maybe God is a God of love. Maybe God is a God of grace, of faithfulness, of forgiveness. Maybe just seems out of place, doesn't it? Because you come down and you decide if you are a believer. Do you believe God is a God of blessing? Do you believe God is a God who keeps His promise? Do you believe God is full of unfailing and faithful love? There's no maybe about it. He is. I believe it. And I take my place among the believers. And I believe. Now, if you believe, I have to put the clarifier in there, if, because maybe you don't. But if you believe that God is a God of blessing, that He is a God who keeps His promises, that we are the heirs of that promise and those blessings, not because of our great faithfulness. We can pretty much rest on that, right? That's not a maybe question. It's not because of us, but because of His promise and His words. Then I want you to listen to these words this morning. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and then turn and tear you to pieces. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives. He who seeks finds, and to him who knocks, the door will be opened. Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your your Father in heaven give you good gifts to those who ask Him? Don't take the precious gift of faith, the gift that God has placed in you. Don't take that sacred gift and treat it as a matter that isn't that important. It is everything. It doesn't matter how dim the light of that faith is. In any given moment, in any given day, it may be good, it may be bad. But don't take that faith that you have been given, that precious gift, and treat it as though it is common. It is not. We do not live in an age where faith in God and belief is common. It is precious. Believe God. Believe Him. He is a God of blessing, and He has said, I'm your Father. He has claimed you in Christ. You are His child. Those things are either true or they're not. And today, I choose to believe they're true. I choose to put my hope not in what I can do, but in the God who is ever loving, always faithful, constantly blessing. I see His blessing. Do you see it? Then don't treat that faith as common. It is precious. And allow that belief to remind you again, that's why you're special. That's why you're unique. Because you believe God. And follow Him. Put your trust in God. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart. And lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight. If you have never professed Christ, if you have never said Jesus is Lord, if you've never said, I believe that Jesus is the Son of God, we want to encourage you to do that today. It is that precious gift of faith, acknowledging who Jesus is, that makes possible the new life that God will bring you. By being baptized into Christ, by being buried with Him, being raised to new life, you can experience all the blessings that God has for you. You will be born again, a child of God, and you'll be an heir of the promise. And if you're a believer and your faith has struggled, if there have been, it seems, more bad days than good of late, then we want to pray for you. We want to encourage you. We want to strengthen your heart and your faith and remind you that God is a loving and faithful God, and He will carry you through. If you have any need this morning, I would pray that you would come forward and let us minister to you. Let's stand together and sing.